Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very, very senior professional from the world of water, Mr. Thomas Schumann. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thomas is a water security investor. He's the founder of Thomas Schumann Capital, and he's a sponsor of financial and investment products for water security. So, Thomas, when I was reading about you, you had an amazing journey from flying to banking to impact investing. Tell me in brief your journey.
Okay, well, yeah, it has been an amazing one, and it still continues. So I was born in 1964 in Frankfurt, Germany, to a single German mom. My father was from Sudan, from Africa, and I did my education there in Germany. After my education, my secondary education, I was always very entrepreneurial, so I decided not to go to the university, and I joined the German Air Force. So I did my service at the German Air Force at the tender age of 19, and then it so happened that there was an opportunity to become a flight attendant. So I became an international flight attendant for Lufthansa German Airlines, and that led me immediately to Santa Monica, California, where I started my first business, which was buying originally used Levi's 501 jeans, and I imported them to Germany. I pioneered that, and now in hindsight, if I look back then, I pretty much already kind of like pioneered or innovated the circular economy for denim jeans, but I was not aware about that.
Wow.
Then I left Germany in 1996. I finally realized my dream to come to America. And then I had different path there in America. I was a vice president of commercial banking, and I did some other things as well. And then it was a pivotal time in 2010. I had a lot of tremendous personal changes and professional changes, and it came to a point in my life, I think it was like around 47 years old, to ask myself, how can I give back? How can I create impact, a global impact? How can I create a legacy and attach myself to something bigger than me? And that's basically where water came into my life.
Wow.
That was 10 years ago.
Wow. And Thomas, you also say that water is the single largest impact investment opportunity. Before I ask you to tell me about this, for my viewers and listeners, simplistically explain, what is impact investing?
Impact investing simplistically means triple bottom line. So in the shareholder capitalism that we still know, which is quickly now transforming to stakeholder capitalism, because we have 7.8 billion stakeholders on the planet. These are 7.8 billion humans. These are 7.8 billion water users. The triple bottom line is very, very important because it's inclusive. It includes people, planet, and profit, and specifically that sequence.
Yeah.
If you do right by people, if you do right by the environment, then the profit follows. And that is basically impact investing. So basically the reverse, what we've been doing as humanity for many, many centuries, always putting profit and greed. And that obviously doesn't work for us anymore. And now, we're changed, we're faced with climate change and environmental catastrophes. So the environment clearly says, nature clearly says to us, we need to go forward and create positive impact first and foremost to make sure that our species and our planet has a future. So it's basically doing well by doing good.
Very nice, very nice. And now tell me about why you believe water is the single largest impact opportunity.
Yes, it's very, very simple, Ashutosh. We're made up out of up to 70% of water. Water is life. Water is also business. 5 days without water, without clean water, a human dies.
Correct.
So I picked specifically, there are 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I specifically picked UN SDG 6, which is ensure access to water for all, also sanitation. So for purpose of this discussion, we maybe should leave sanitation out, but there's still 700 million people currently on the planet that do not have access to sanitation, which is a big challenge.
Right.
Causes a lot of diseases and other things. So water pretty much drives anything and everything. And that's why I personally believe that it's the biggest impact investment opportunity. And what's also very important for our listeners to understand is that climate is water. Climate expresses itself through water. So we have either too much water because of climate, or we have too little water. We have sea level rise. We have contamination. We have changes in the biosphere. And the faster and more rapidly the planet is heating up, obviously, the less there is available water for us.
Well said. Well said. So now let's move to Thomas Schumann Capital. Tell me what kind of work you're doing here and the work you're doing specifically in the area of water.
I started 10 years ago, and I started on the bottled water side and then quickly pivoted. I was back then still in California. I'm now in Frankfurt, Germany. We had the millennial drought in California, and I was very compelled of doing something about that. So I have water technology companies with their financing needs, and then quickly realized to do something or helping global capital markets to be able to quantify and qualify water risk in corporates and equities in their investment decisions in portfolios is really the way to go to move the needle. So I set out and developed the world's first equity index series. It's called the TSC Water Security Index. And we're looking at European equities, US equities, like the S&P 500. And then we also have now a global index, which is identical to the MSCI World. And we're looking at how these companies manage their water. Do they have a low water footprint? Do they have a high water footprint? What is their consumption? Do they have policies? Do they have governance in place? And based upon that, we basically rank these companies. And then the investment thesis is, if you invest in companies who embrace water stewardship, who manage their water well, obviously, you can expect long-term sustainable.
So my next question to you is, how serious is the problem of managing water across the world?
It's very, very serious. According to Wood Mackenzie, global GDP is projected to reach 170 trillion by 2050. So that's 170 trillion. At the moment, I think we're somewhere around 89 or 90 something trillion. So we're pretty much doubling or planning to double GDP. That's not possible if we don't have a sustainable growth strategy. And it's projected also that if we do not start investing immediately in water and climate action, that we're facing a potential loss of up to 6% of this global GDP, and that would be 10.2 trillion of global GDP by 2050. So this is basically the investment case. The OECD estimates that investment is needed until 2030. We're only 7 years out from that to achieve SDG 6, ensure access to water for all, approximately 1.7 trillion, and that's 3 times the current spend.
Wow. And when we are talking water, we are obviously talking only potable water, or are you talking of non-potable?
No, we're talking pretty much about the whole ecosystem, and what's really important, Ashutosh, is water infrastructure. Water infrastructure enables, utilities and governments, municipalities to deliver the water to the people. And for example, in the US, the water infrastructure is completely outdated. It's up to 100 years old. So at the moment, we're facing a 1 trillion water infrastructure financing gap. So it's really mainly about making sure that people, and obviously business as well, but people come first, reliable access, continuous access to water.
Very interesting. And when I'm not an expert in water, but when one looks around, one sees a massive imbalance in the way water is being used, and also, given climate change, the incredible amount of floods leading to huge fresh water being wasted.
Correct.
What can the common person do about doing their bit for water security?
It's very, very simple, and it doesn't cost anything, Ashutosh. It's basically being conscious, being aware of the value and importance of water. And it starts with reduce, reuse, recycle. If every person on the planet would do their little thing, being conscious about water, that's very, very precious. Do their own little parts, be it, minimizing their consumption, which is very, very important. Maybe changing their eating habits, because, for example, 70% of global water use goes into animal agriculture. then we can quickly create some major impact. So the biggest problem at the moment that the awareness and consciousness of the value of water and the importance of water is not there.
You know, I've also been reading and talking to some people on my show, and one of them has almost entirely focused his life on rejuvenating water bodies. What, in your opinion, goes into rejuvenating such a body, and what does it do for society?
I don't know if I'm an expert to speak on water bodies, on the biosphere, but I would argue it's obviously very challenging with climate change to rejuvenate water bodies, because you're really depending on rain, on precipitation, on snow, et cetera, et cetera. So if we're looking, for example, at the US, and the Colorado River basin is drying up, which is a major, or Lake Mead. I think it's, I don't want to say it's impossible. It's very challenging to rejuvenate these water environments, because you're really depending on nature.
And yet there is also a belief, and I'd love to get your perspective, that if you leave Mother Nature on her own, she brings the balance back. And people say that the pandemic has actually helped water bodies.
It did, yeah, it did, because we were all locked up. So obviously also it had a positive effect on the air, right? Because we had a much cleaner air worldwide and much less traffic. I agree with you, but I would also have to say that as humans, we're really predisposed of self-sabotaging ourselves, of sabotaging our environment, destroying our environment. And we're at a trajectory now. Again, you know, it's extensive consumption, not aware. So if we posit that Mother Nature will regulate it again in the future, which I truly believe as well, that might also mean that, you know, there will be tremendous loss of life.
Very interesting. So Thomas, now let's move to Thomas Schumann Capital and the work that you're doing. What are some of the key metrics you look for before you think of putting some money?
Again, I'm very specific just on water. And, you know, if you know, the companies we're looking at, and, you know, let's say, for example, the S&P 500, you know, these are all the big tech values. If it's Apple, if it's Facebook, if it's Amazon, obviously we're looking at how they are treating their water. And all of these companies, and a lot of people won't believe that, they're heavy water users, because technology companies need servers. And they need immense amounts of water. So usually when they set up new factories, even Tesla, there's an issue now with Tesla in Germany. The first thing is when they set up new companies, they look for the groundwater supply. There's already a conflict of interest, because the groundwater supply primarily belongs to the population there. Right? So we're looking at all these different metrics, how these companies behave. Are they good actors? Are they bad actors? Water consumption, environmental controversies is very important. And that basically, you know, substantiates the investment case. So
well said.
In the index series, basically, you know, in the layman's terms, we overweight companies that manage their water well, and we underweight companies which do not manage their water well, which still have to step up.
And when you say manage their water well, what do you mean?
So there's certain companies now, I don't know if I should mention names, but there's some big technology companies, for example, they have clear goals. They say we want to be at net zero for water by 2030, by 2035. So they have these goals, and they publicize these goals, and obviously one has to see if they're really following up on these goals. But if the company is already aware that they need to work on their water footprint, and that they're striving not only towards a carbon net zero, but also towards a water net zero, that's already, you know, that's already the right direction.
And when you say water net zero, I'm assuming you mean they will put back water that they are taking out.
Yes. So ideally, it's basically like with a bank account, right? I mean, what we're doing at the moment as humanity, we're basically overdrawing the bank account, which is, you know, the mismanagement of water. So you only can spend so much money that you as you have in the bank. Same thing is with water. Ideally, you want to be positive. You want to take less water out, and want to make sure that the water has an opportunity to replenish itself.
There is also a big move in some states in the US to move away from bottled water because they're saying your tap water is absolutely okay to drink. And yet that is not the case in a very large part of the developing world.
Yes.
How do you reconcile as an impact investor this huge disparity?
To my knowledge and research and being in the space, I can tell you that tap water, specifically in the US, is not what it should be and where it should be. There's something to do again with the infrastructure that is up to 100 years old. There are lead pipes, there are corroding pipes, there are leaks. There's a huge problem in the US because the US is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, user of prescription medication. And what happens when people don't need them or use them anymore? They're being flushed down the toilet. So there is no filtration in place yet that these little particles that they're dissolving are being filtered out. So they cause changes, in the endocrine system and everything else like that. So the water is really, really highly toxic, one must say, and we hear that every day. Flint is only the tip of the iceberg. Obviously, it's not popular to talk about that and to report on that because then the politicians are being questioned. But if we also look at the oceans, we have they're heavily polluted by microplastics now. So we're basically through fish, through animals, through our food, we're eating our own plastic.
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And as someone who has looked at water for such a long time, and given the fact that we seem to now beginning to understand the problems that we will face if water is not protected, what is your prediction on the world beginning to reach some kind of a semblance of meeting the SDG?
Well, there's a lot of talk, and the SDGs, I think they first have been established, I would have to look it up, but probably like 20 years ago. And now there's the Agenda 2030. There's the Water Action Decade, which started in 2018. So, but we are, very close to 2028 already. There was COP26 in the UK last year. It was the first time that water had a seat on the table. Now we're moving towards COP27 in Egypt, I think in November. There's just not enough urgent action and implementation, and this is really, really critical. In terms of an outlook for water, well, I have a very positive outlook on life, and I'm very hopeful, and I live on faith. But I have to say too, and I wonder if you concur with me, unfortunately, we humans only learn through pain and suffering to change our ways. So I think it first has to come to certain points, unfortunately, until we wake up, change our ways, and heal.
Well said. So, Thomas, I have time for two more questions. My next question is for the life that is other than human life, who have an equal right to the water our planet has, right? Animals, birds, and all the other living beings.
Absolutely.
The only people who have messed up the water is us.
That's right.
And we have to set it right, not just for ourselves, but for the other living beings as well.
Absolutely.
I'd like to get your perspective on, is this being looked at? And if yes, what is being done?
People still do not understand it. And I say it in a very simple sentence, and it's not coming from me. It's being used in Germany very, very often. First, the forest dies, and then we die. First, the forest dies, and then we die.
Correct.
So we kill our environment, and then we're basically killing ourselves already. That's all I have to say to that.
Well said. Because I've been seeing, whether it's in India or in other parts of the world, we are actually creating water bodies for animals inside the jungles. I think is on the one side sensible, but on the other side unfortunate that we destroyed it first, and now we have to create natural, artificial bodies for the same animals.
Interesting. But also, if you look at the animal kingdom or at nature, and that's something, where I would really argue that's where we should and need to learn from. Nature and animals only take what they need.
Absolutely.
And that's sustainability. In nature, you will not find one animal that's, for example, overweight or obese.
Correct.
it doesn't exist.
Correct. Well said. So, Thomas, my last question to you, and this is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation. What would you say are 3 lessons you would like our viewers and listeners to take back from your vast experience in the field of water, from our conversation, and from your entire journey?
Well, I would say it in one sentence, and I'm always using Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding fathers of the United States. He was a very wise man, and I think in 1746 he wrote a little booklet which was called the Poor Richard's Almanac. And he said at this point in time, and that was more than 200 years ago almost, I think, he said, when the well runs dry, we know the worth of water. Let me repeat that again. When the well runs dry, we know the worth of water. He said that almost 200 years ago. And I traveled through Romania, and there was a situation one day where there was no water anymore. And if you ever experienced with a certain expectations going to the sink in the kitchen or going into the shower, and you turn on the faucet and you expect that water's coming out. You need the water, you want to drink the water, you want to cook, and nothing comes. That is a wake-up call.
Wow.
And we don't want to go there.
Amazing. Thomas, on that note, thank you so much for talking to me about water, about your amazing journey. Thank you for the wake-up call that I have got, and I'm sure all my viewers and listeners have got from your thoughts about water, and how, you even mentioned the old German saying, first the jungle dies and then we die. And in the jungle, there are lots of animals and other living beings. Thank you also for talking to me about Thomas Schumann Capital and about the amazing work that you're doing for the SDGs that are there and are guiding almost the entire world. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thank you for everybody for listening. If you want to get some more information, you can go to my website, which is thomasschumann.com. That's ThomasSchumann.com.
Wonderful. I would urge people to go and look, at thomasschumann.com. I've had a look at it. It's a fascinating site with lots of amazing information. Thank you, Thomas, and good luck.
My love to India. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.